Okay, I'd like to welcome everyone to the first of our summer webinars, topic number 10, which is leadership. Today is the first official day of summer. I hope that you're looking forward to a great summer that includes meeting with your Mitzvah groups. So I'd like to remind you, as I always do, to please post on Facebook anything interesting that is going on in your groups. And of course, we'll see when we do this, what are some interesting ways we can address this topic, and I hope to see those things on next month's Facebook. Let's start out with the themes. Today's Jewish sources are filled with stories about leadership. While many of the narratives about leadership found in the Bible and rabbinic literature do not generally offer explicit guidance about leadership, they are filled with implicit values and messages that we can apply to our lives today. In a world that's filled with the need for courageous, moral, and creative leadership, our tradition can help guide our personal leadership practices, as well as help us select leaders who have the capacity to move us forward. This session will give your group the opportunity to consider ancient and contemporary thinking about leadership, as well as modern and biblical models of leadership. As you do so, you'll explore what we value in leadership, as well as what makes the role of the leader so complicated. As you can see on the screen are the questions that will be answered by this study and discussion. The first one is, what makes a leader? The second one, why is leadership fraught with complication? And the third, can leadership qualities be taught or are they innate? We're going to start out. Actually, before I show you this, okay, before beginning the session, ask your participants to brainstorm their top 10 lists of leadership qualities. Ask each participant to record the qualities they believe are most important for a person to be successful in a position of leadership. And then in partners, ask people to compare and rank their qualities in order, beginning with what they believe is the most important quality. And then you can ask them to explain their selections and ranking, as well as to reveal any discrepancies. This is a great thing to do before we actually look at the text. So I tried it myself, and what I came up with is a little different than what the text came up with. It'll be interesting to see if anyone wants to share their ideas. I'll give you a minute to think. And then if you can, just go to the Q&A window and write down what you thought was the one most important quality that a leader needs to have, and then I can share it. I'll just give you like a minute. Okay, I'll also, if anybody wants to chime in, I can unmute you. Hold on. But you certainly don't have to. Oh, Michelle, it's nice to see you. I am going to, I'm going to unmute you because it's always great to see you. I have some people who are less wanting to share. They don't want to be heard, so I'm not going to put them on here. But are you unmuted now? Unmute. Okay. So if you want to chime in, let me put this back on the screen. Would you like to share what you thought was the most important quality of a leader? Oh, your volume stopped working. Okay. Well, then you won't talk out loud, but you could tell me what you came up with as you thought for your. I'll tell you what I came up with, if that helps. And it was not on the list, but I still think it's important. It's sort of on the list. It's I think it's important for a leader to be fair. I thought that was a very important quality of a leader. If anyone else wants to contribute, you can. Otherwise, I'll go on and I'll tell you what I came up with, and then I'll show you what our text came up with. And I think our text is probably a lot more, you know, it's Harvard Business School. I thought fair. I thought an impartial perspective. Someone who's approachable, who's dedicated, and who's caring. Those were the 5 I came up with. Let's see what our contemporary understandings. Okay, so the text we're about to focus on It's Leadership Competencies, and it's published by the Harvard Business Review. We can look at this list that your participants compile, and we can compare them to the one found in this research. What did they leave out, and what would they like to add? See if they're surprised by the particular qualities which they selected that didn't appear, and do they want to revise their selections based on the research? I definitely want to revise mine. The subject of leadership is really important. For years, researchers have tried to explore the secret sauce of leadership. Why do some leaders succeed while others fail? Our first texts are excerpts from research published at the Harvard Business Review. Dr. Sunny Giles combines neuroscience and social science in the development of her theories around leadership and what contributes to effective leadership. That's what this text is. So number one, demonstrates strong ethics and provides a sense of safety. So taken together, these attributes are all about creating a safe and trusting environment. A leader with high ethical standards conveys a commitment to fairness. So my fairness is kind of in there, instilling confidence that both they and their employees will honor the rules of the game. Similarly, when leaders communicate their expectations, they avoid blindsiding people and ensure that everyone is on the same page. In a safe environment, employees can relax, invoking the brain's higher capacity for social engagement, innovation, creativity, and ambition. So what we know from this is that if people working together feel safe, they'll be able to be creative, they'll be able to contribute in ways that they wouldn't if they felt threatened. Okay, 2, empowers others to self-organize. If you've ever had someone you worked with who was really micromanaging you, you know what this is. You want someone who's going to provide clear direction, but allow employees to organize their own time and work. No leader can do everything by themselves, and we're going to see this later when we look at Moses. Therefore, it's critical to distribute power throughout the organization and to rely on decision-making from those who are closest to the action. Okay, the third important quality, fosters a sense of connection and belonging. So we're a social species, and that's where the neuroscience comes in. We want to connect and feel a sense of belonging. From an evolutionary perspective, attachment is important because it improves our chances of survival in a world full of predators. Research suggests that a sense of connection could also impact productivity and emotional well-being. From a neuroscience perspective, creating connection is a leader's second most important job. Once we feel safe, which is a sensation that's registered in the reptilian brain, we also have to feel cared for, which activates the limbic brain, in order to unleash the full potential of our higher performing frontal cortex. Okay, number 4, shows openness to new ideas and fosters organizational learning. So tunnel vision helps us focus, but it closes us off to the rest of the new ideas and approaches. So to encourage learning among employees, leaders have to first ensure that they're open to learning and to changing course. They have to be flexible themselves. Failure is required for learning, but if you're afraid to ever make a mistake, you're not going to take chances. So to resolve this conflict, leaders have to create a culture that supports risk-taking. Then the last one, nurtures growth. When leaders show a commitment to our growth, employees are motivated to reciprocate, expressing their gratitude or loyalty by going the extra mile. So while managing through fear generates stress, which impairs higher brain function, the quality of work is vastly different when we are compelled by appreciation. If you want to inspire the best from your team, advocate for them. Support their training and promotion, and go to bat to sponsor their important projects. So after reading this text, some of the questions that you'll want to ask your group are, which of these findings do you find most compelling? Do you find anything here surprising? One thing I found a little bit surprising was sometimes I think when I've been too accepting of mistakes, I've had people who just don't take me seriously. So I guess there's a fine line there that you have to find. Which of these competencies do you think a person can learn to incorporate into his or her practice? Which do you think are hardest to learn? In other words, what are you born with and what can be cultivated over time? I think something that's not discussed here, but I think comes into it, and you can let me know after you discuss this with your groups, where does confidence come into this? Because I think in order to be a leader, you need to be confident. And in order to do all of these things that you see on the screen, you kind of need to be confident and not be afraid to do them. So that's something that I'd love to hear about next time we get together. Which of these competencies do you think are most important for leaders in our modern day world? That could, I'm sure, get into a very interesting political discussion. I'll leave that up to you guys. And which of these competencies would you like to develop in yourself? And I'd certainly like to develop all of them in myself. But it's an opportunity to look at yourself and see what you think and how you lead now and how you can change in the future, whether this would help you. The next thing we're going to look at is understanding leadership through Moses. But before we do that, because that is a very dense text and some of the other ones are as well, there's a nice activity you can use when you do this with your groups. It's called close reading. So this is a good technique. It has 4 parts, as you can see. The first one is read the text. So the leader will read the text slowly, or you can go around the group. And then you'll reread the text, asking participants to highlight phrases and words that call out to them as they listen. You might not want to read it twice. You might want to read it once and have people highlight as they listen. Then the participants will divide the text up into sections, and they'll give a title to each section. That's important because it helps you to kind of digest it. And then they pick out a paragraph or a verse of the text that they find significant. And that's going to help in the discussion that comes later. And you can do this, you can divide into pairs, as you see, part 3, and have this discussion. And then the whole group can come back and discuss what they, how their discussion went as pairs, so they can share what they came up with. So now we can look at this technique while we explore Moses as a leader. Okay, so Moses, Portrait of Leadership. You can see there's a lot of text there. And you probably know the story of Moses and his coming. I mean, everybody knows the story. But when you read it and you think of it from a leadership perspective, you can kind of look at it with new eyes. So no other character in the Bible is as fully developed as Moses. We watch him rise to leadership, move through the challenges and the successes of his leadership, and then we finally watch him leave his position as leader of Israel. And so Rabbi Nathan Laufer says in his introduction to the book, The Genesis of Leadership, as adults, we learn far better from stories than from abstractions. We learn better from human narratives than we do from abstractions. They engage us better. Stories are a powerful platform producing personal transformations and communal change. So as we read through this narrative of Moses, we should think of our own styles of leadership and leaders who serve as models to us. What can we learn from Moses about who we are or want to see in our leaders today? And how can his experiences inform our own understandings of leadership? So because this is a webinar and we're not going to take a super long time to go through this, I did go through it and I did highlight some sections. And so there are a lot of different ways of looking at this. You can see different aspects of Moses' leadership here. And so I focused on Moses' concerns about accepting the leadership role and how God answers each of Moses' concerns. The text goes on to describe how God sends Aaron to help, and he gives Moses a staff to perform signs. They build on what I highlighted. So first, God says, "Come now, therefore, and I will send thee unto Pharaoh, that thou mayest bring forth my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt." So he's saying, like, Moses, step up. You're going to get these people out. And Moses says, who am I that I should go unto Pharaoh and that I should bring forth the children of Israel out of Egypt? So he could be humble, or he could be like just reluctant. God says, certainly I will be with you. And now you know that Moses is really reluctant because he says, what shall I say unto them? Like, he doesn't know where to start. And God said unto Moses, thus shalt thou say unto the children of Israel, the Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob, has sent me unto you. So God is saying, like Moses, you can do it, step up. And Moses is being pretty reluctant. Then the next text, which goes with this, is leadership in action. It's Exodus. And I continue to see Moses as a reluctant leader. You can see by what I highlighted, but there are other ways of reading this also. I highlighted Moses cried unto the Lord, saying, what shall I do unto this people? They are almost ready to stone me. And God says, I will stand before thee upon the rock of Horeb. And then Moses, also even with his father-in-law, with Jethro, he says, perhaps because the people come unto me to inquire of God, like he's the conduit between them and God. When they have a matter, it comes to me, and I judge between a man and his neighbor, and I make them know the statutes of God and his laws. But he was overwhelmed. And this, you might remember in this particular parsha, Moses is totally overwhelmed. He can't handle all of the people who are coming to him. They're lined up. It's like being at motor vehicles in New Jersey. They're just there forever. So Jethro gives him advice. He says, the thing you're doing is not good. You will surely wear away, both you and this people that is with you, for the thing is too heavy for thee. Thou art not able to perform it thyself alone. So Jethro gives him the idea that he needs to delegate. He points out to Moses that he can't possibly judge each case individually, and should appoint some wise people to help him. In modern day leadership and literature, this model is referred to as distributive leadership. I call it delegating. This text invites us to discuss models of leadership and asks, what models of leadership do you observe in your own environments, either in your professional world or in your volunteer work? And what do you believe makes for successful leadership? So that's interesting. It's interesting to look at this text and to take it to today, to present day. And it shows how relevant Moses is and how certain things never change. The next part we get to is one of my favorites. It's the role of women in leadership. I really, really like this. And there are a few really nice texts. This is a long book, has a lot of texts. You can do as many as you get to, but I love this one. So we often see a focus on male leaderships in the biblical narrative, but we also have strong women who served as leaders and partners to the men. We have the matriarchs. We have Miriam, Devorah, Ruth, Esther. And while so many of the stories in Jewish history record the contributions of men, there's also a powerful tradition continuing even today of courageous women who contribute their leadership to the advancement of Judaism. The state of Israel, of course, is filled with them. And also other places where women have contributed to causes that are important for them. So we're going to explore a poem by Rachel Adler. It explores the theme of the lack of women's voices in the recording of the ancient Jewish experience. On the Jewish Women's Archive website, David Ellison writes, in case you don't know that much about Rachel Adler, the writings of Rachel Adler on Jewish law and ritual have catapulted her into the center of modern Jewish religious discourse. And she's unquestionably among the leading constructive Jewish theologians, translators, and liturgists of the modern era. She's garnered attention from Jewish and non-Jewish scholars and women and men alike. So here's a text that's called We All Stood Together. My brother and I were at Sinai. He kept a journal of what he saw, of what he heard, of what it all meant to him. I wish I had such a record of what happened to me there. It seems like every time I want to write, I can't. I'm always holding a baby, one of my own, or one for a friend. Always holding a baby, so my hands are never free to write things down. And then as time passes, the particulars, the hard data, the who, what, when, where, why, slip away from me. And all I'm left with is the feeling. But feelings are just sounds, the vowel barking of a mute. My brother is so sure of what he heard. After all, he's got a record of it, consonant after consonant after consonant. So the conversation inspired by this poem includes, what part of this resonates with you? And I'm excited to tell you what part resonates with me. Do you think the issues raised in this poem continue to be present in the lives of women today? And how is this similar or different from the description of women's lives today? So in this discussion, especially if you've got a lot of women in your group, I found it very relevant. I love this image of wanting to write things down, but not being able to because you're holding a baby. And her brother is so sure of what happened because he wrote it down. But what I want to point out is that he wrote down his subjective view of the events, as we all do. But the woman is the one who questions her memory. So that's something to keep in mind as you're discussing it. And if anybody wants to chime in here in any way, I've got my text open. Okay. Hearing the call, Chana Senesh. So I love Hannah Senesh. I don't know why. Maybe because I'm of Hungarian descent. Maybe because she just reminds me of relatives of mine. But Hannah Senesh is a great story. She was born in Budapest in 1921, and she died in 1944. She's probably most known for her death. After emigrating to British Mandate Palestine in 1939, Hannah Senesh joined the British Army in pre-state Israel in 1943 at the age of 22 in order to help save the Jewish people suffering in Germany. So she went back into Hungary. She parachuted into Hungary. Part of it was she really wanted to save her mother. And they were both in jail together, and they actually passed notes to each other. But she kept a diary that tells a story, her story. She was idealistic and courageous. She was very young. And it was a time in our history when we really needed idealists. So here's the text. I'm going to read the text from her, and then we can look at the questions on the screen. She wrote, I don't know whether I've already mentioned that I've become a Zionist. This word stands for a tremendous number of things. To me, it means, in short, that I now consciously and strongly feel I am a Jew, and I'm proud of it. My primary aim is to go to Palestine, to work for it. Of course, this did not develop from one day to the next. It was a somewhat gradual development. There was first talk of it about 3 years ago, and at that time I vehemently attacked the Zionist movement. Since then, people, events, times have all brought me closer to the idea, and I'm immeasurably happy that I've found this ideal, that now I feel firm ground under my feet, and I can see a definite goal towards which it is really worth striving. I'm going to start learning Hebrew, and I'll attend one of the youth groups. In short, I'm really going to knuckle down properly. I've become a different person, and it's a very good feeling, because she's very young. One needs something to believe in, something for which one can have wholehearted enthusiasm. One needs to feel that one's life has meaning, that one is needed in this world. Zionism fulfills all of this for me. One hears a good many arguments against the movement, but this doesn't matter. I believe in it, and that's the important thing. I'm convinced that Zionism is Jewry's solution to its problems, and that the outstanding work being done in Palestine is not in vain. Okay, so the conversation shaped by this text is really relevant to Jewish leaders, both men and women today. What characteristics and qualities would you use to describe Hannah Senesh based on the reading of this diary excerpt? She's idealistic. She's sure. But it's interesting because she's also a little bit, her perspective is that she knows not everybody's going to agree with her, but she's sure for herself. How does the tone in Hannah Senesh's diary entry compare to that of Moses' opening conversation with God? What do you think contributes to this difference? So she seems a lot more sure than Moses was that she's going to take this course and that she's going to succeed. If anybody wants to chime in, feel welcome. You can type on the chat or in the questions. And even in the questions, one difference between Moses and Hannah Senesh is that Moses is an older man by the time he hears God's call, where she's very young. And how do these factors enter into the call to lead? Many Jewish women have taken roles of leadership in important movements, fighting for social justice. And that's nice to know as you have your conversation as well. Lily Montague and Rose Schneiderman fought for women's suffrage. Betty Friedan and Gloria Steinem were among the most famous names associated with the feminist movement. What about Jewish tradition do you think contributes to this pull to stand up in the face of social iniquities? I think everyone knows that that is a tenet of Judaism. We were slaves in Egypt, and so we stand up for the oppressed. And I think that translates into this as well. Questions, comments? Okay, I'll go on. Okay, the next woman that we look at is Henrietta Szold. And Henrietta Szold, she wrote a long entry in Hadassah magazine. So one of the ways that is suggested to read this is give a title or caption to each section. So you're dividing it up. And what is she talking about in each section? I'm going to just give you a little background on her life also, just because she was an amazing scholar. She was a translator. She was born in America but moved to Israel. And she started Hadassah and Hadassah Hospital. She's an amazing leader. She never married. She liked a man who was 15 years her junior, and she was very sad when it didn't become anything. Because at the time that she lived, she really wanted children. And I think helping children, victims of World War II, was very important to her, partially for this reason, partially for other reasons. So what she writes is, it is a matter of 5 years since I have stood face to face with you, and I return to you today to be enfolded in the arms of affection. I am more moved than I can say. And what do I see? I remember nearly a quarter of a century ago, a band of women, a small band, assembled in the vestry rooms of one of our synagogues. They were the founders of Hadassah, not I. And when they gathered unto themselves, woman after woman, and those women labored, as it has been said, like bees, not only all the daylight hours, but far into the night, they were the builders of Hadassah. And I like to think that in Hadassah, the individual disappears, which I think is a good leadership. As we're reading this, the individual disappears. The individual is not known. It is the people who will not brook indignity and humiliation, but will insist upon asserting themselves and upon building a future, no matter what may have been done to destroy their present. My friends, I come to you not only from Palestine, where I have spent 15 years. I come to you also from Germany, from Austria, from Holland. Now she's referring to how she was helping out with Holocaust victims. I come to you from Germany. That land has not yet been able anymore to find a place for Emanuel Liszt, for Heinz Lippmann, for Albert Einstein. I come to you from Austria, where our people are sitting upon a volcano that is already rumbling. And I come to you from Little Holland that has acted gallantly, that has received refugees upon refugees, that has enabled us there to prepare our youth for Palestine and for other countries in an outstanding way. And I come to you here, and I find you are consciously or unconsciously, certainly energetically, doing a great part towards rescuing the Jews, our people. I am amazed, I am struck with wonder that you should have had the courage to take up, in addition to your unfinished task in Palestine, the medical work, remember Hadassah Hospital, that has lost neither its claim upon you, nor the need for its existence and continuation, that you shall have added a great, you've heard how great a task that is. So now she's talking about the youth aliyah that came to Palestine. They went to Ein Harod in the Emek. That group is about to complete a 2-year period. They'll stand on their own feet. They were taking these kids and they were raising them and letting them stand on their own feet. They will have received 2 years of instruction in practical work on the farm, in stables, in the workshops. They will have received 2 years of instruction in the Hebrew language and adjustment to the conditions of their new home through the study of Jewish history, Jewish literacy, and the geography of Palestine. He says, before I left Palestine, this group of 59 had been debating and discussing for several months what they would do when the 2-year period came to close. They sent me their discussions written in Hebrew, in good Hebrew, so you see they learned. And the result was that 40 women were going to remain together as a group and settle together with 20 or 25 native children, boys and girls, and form a new settlement. The other 18, some are going to learn trades, some are going to go into other rural settlements, some are going to parents who in the meantime arrived, and some to relatives. We're going to watch them. We're not going to abandon them, though they may not any longer receive financial aid from us. Can you imagine any more fruitful plan than the one I have described to you? Can you imagine a colonization more beautiful? Altogether, our undertaking in Palestine has been unprecedented. We've made mistakes, but we have achieved. We did not know. We were inexperienced. You see, that leads back to our leadership discussion, being able to make mistakes and learn. We've done much, but there is still much more to be done. Our educational system is not perfect. We cannot teach trades, for instance, as we should teach them to those young boys and girls going into the country. We must do that. We have raised the structures on deep, solid foundations, and now Hadassah, which is taking care of the health of a whole generation almost in Palestine. And I want to say, even if it be only parenthetical, that the undertaking was great and noble, that you have done a piece of work that may never be forgotten, that saved the lives of many of the immigrants, a piece of work that must go on. You must take upon your shoulders this double task. Hadassah has now entered upon the fundamental work of Zionist colonization, the furnishing of immigrant preparation abroad, preparation with the land and settlement on the land. I congratulate Hadassah. So if you look at this, you can see the qualities that can be identified from her words. We talked about it a little as I was reading. And as you read, imagine that you're reading this report in 1936. Are there particular sections or phrases that motivate you to follow her lead? I mean, we know what came after that, but at that time they didn't. Is there anything in the report that turns you away from following her? How much of your response to these questions is as a result of her style, and how much is related to the contents of her words? So that's something else to think about when you look at a leader, is it their style or their words that make you want to follow them? And as leaders yourselves, what do you think makes people want to follow you? So now we're going to go back to the leadership competencies, okay? And we're going to see, from the leaders that we studied, did they demonstrate strong ethics and provide a sense of safety? Did they empower others to self-organize? Did they foster a sense of connection and belonging? Did they show openness to new ideas? And we can, when you discuss this with your groups, you can say to yourself, like, which ones? Did Moses do this? Did Senesh do this? Did Henrietta Szold do this? And did they nurture growth? So that's an interesting way to bring the whole thing back together. And the last thing we're going to talk about are reflections. So as you know, Chaimitzvah participants choose a special learning, social action, and commitment to deepen or adopt a spiritual or ritual practice. So we're going to look at what your group is doing through the lens of leadership and ask them, you know, what or who inspired you to your social action choice, and who do you hope to inspire with your example? That would be an interesting discussion. And so now I'm open to any questions or answers if anyone has. And I am not getting any. So I'm going to say thank you very much for participating in this webinar. I wish everybody a happy summer. And of course, there'll be another webinar for the next topic, the next summer topic. But until then, enjoy the summer. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.